Good evening, Dungeon Masters. I'm Baron Durop. I think we finally figured out all of our audio issues. So let me know in the chat if it's an absolute disaster. But today, trying again here, we have therapeutic counselor Daniel Hand. Thanks for joining me on the stream. Daniel is a therapeutic counselor who has been using RPGs in his therapy practice for 5 years. He's been doing psychotherapy for a total of 8 years and has been playing D&D for a total of 20 years. He just published a book called The Role-Playing Games in Psychotherapy: A Practitioner's Guide. We're here to talk about just his book, what motivated him to start it today, and field some questions from you all. Oh no, we lost his video. You're killing me, Smalls. Oh, let's see if we can get his webcam back. No echo. Dan, are you still with me on the stream? Audio-wise, did we lose his internet connection after all that? Oh my gosh, this has been an absolute nightmare. Let's see, where did he go? Where did he go? I'm gonna message him right now because this is just hilarious. We'll edit the video for the people who join the chat or want to do a live replay of the chat later. We'll edit it. Where did you go? Oh, we just messaged him on WhatsApp to find out what happened here. So I don't know. So anyway, just to keep rolling here with the nonsense. Let's see. What happened? EOS webcam utility. It looks like his. It looks like it totally dropped. I don't know what happened, but just to keep things rolling here, we've got a charity going on for the Mental Health Foundation based in the UK, which is where Dan works. So if you want to, I don't know what we can do to gamify the chat at this point, but if you want to join, and Dan, I can't hear you if you're joining. Oh, is he coming back? Is he coming back? I think he's coming back. But anyway, let's join. Let's throw some charity money at the Mental Health Foundation. If you all have any questions, I don't know how we can gamify this. It seems weird to gamify mental health, but feel free to donate. Oh man, what's going on? Let's check the Zoom. Is he there? Am I the only one here? He dropped. Let's see if we can get him back. I'm gonna shoot him a message to join the chat again. Anyway, I guess we can do some Q&A and we'll edit the stream later. Where did you go? He's not answering. I think his internet may have gone. Did his internet completely go out? So, well, let's just do some Q&A. Screw it. What do you all want to talk about? It's taken us an hour to get to this point, I feel like. Longer than, because we were supposed to start at 11. Yeah, it's just at an hour. So yeah, Sam, thank you very much for almost hitting 60K. I feel like I should have hit it quite a while ago. Oh, we're getting some action on the... Are we getting some action on the...
I'm back.
He's back. Let's see if we can recapture the device here. He's back.
Kicked me out for some reason.
It kicked you out. I don't know what happened there. Let's see here.
Because we were doing well and we were getting excited.
I know. That's exactly what it was. Let's see here. It looks like the window capture is jacked. And it also looks like whatever you're using for your webcam
Shut up. Okay.
Is super tiny audio feed, or video feed rather. So I'm just gonna...
How about that? Let's just...
There we go. We can do that one.
Turn off the bloody posh camera that my wife has and just go for the crappy...
The standard issue. I mean, hey, if it works, it works,
yeah.
you know?
Yeah, I'm trying to be, look good. But
trying to look good. Yeah, no, I get it, man. I get it.
It doesn't happen very often, let's face it.
Right. Let's see. Let's get rid of that one. We're going to try again here. Window capture, pipe wire. This is my first time using OBS. So Zoom meeting. Share. Boom. There we go. All right, let's move you down. And then we can put this one over here. Make it a little bigger. Whoa. There we go. And then switch this over here. Let's do this. There we go. Now we're cooking with gas. All right. So now that we got everything working,
Don't. Why did you have to say it?
I know.
Why?
Now we're cursed. So
Yeah. Oh.
okay. So thanks for joining on the stream. We've already
Am I on
kind
the
of.
stream?
I think we are on the stream. Yeah.
I'm on the stream. Okay.
Yeah. So everybody, everything looks good, right? Visual tools made learning 100. Okay, so yeah, we've got some people in the chat. We've got 22. Normally we've got a little bit more, but anyway, thanks for joining, everybody. Dan, let's jump in and talk about your book. Like, what got you started on what
Book?
like
What
how
book?
did you get
There's a
here?
book.
Why are you
I
here?
don't. I don't know anymore. I lost all sense of time and space about 40 minutes ago.
I know,
Since then,
right?
it's
That's like the last hour just didn't exist. For anybody who's just joining the stream, we've totally had no end of technical issues, so we're starting an hour late. And did the last 15 minutes as a live fire exercise. So thank you, Richard, for donating to the Mental Health Foundation. But yeah, so Dan, tell us about why are you on the stream? How'd you get to this place? What's going on with the book?
so. Um, as you mentioned a little while ago, I've been a therapist now for several years. I think 8 years is right, but do not quote me on that. Um, as I've been a player for about 20 odd years, and when you're doing your psychotherapist training, you're often asked to, do thought experiments, do a presentation on something that you think would be a good therapeutic intervention. And having been an author all my life, having been playing games for, well, 10 years by that point, RPGs were just a natural fit. Uh, Looked into it, did some research, ended up using it with a few clients, just using them as guinea pigs. It was completely ethical. Oh yeah, yeah. And as I'm sure you can appreciate from your own experience, it was magical.
Awesome.
And yeah, and that was several years ago. And the reason the books come about is because the vast majority of RPGs that are currently available are just massively inappropriate for therapeutic use. They're either too expensive, require too many people, too complicated. Just the majority of therapists, psychologists, social workers, anybody working in mental health, very few of them are trained to work with large groups. So,
Right.
D&D, not really great for one-on-one play. I mean, it's doable, obviously, but
Right. I'm gonna
only
take
with a
some
lot
notes
of, yeah, only with a lot of, modifying and homebrewing, and to the point where you might as well just write your own book. And yeah, so that's essentially what I did. I tried D&D. The first time I ever used D&D, I used RPGs with a client, was a D&D adventure. I think it was the Essentials kit.
here.
It took us 2 full sessions to create the client's character. And don't get me wrong, it was good. We got a lot out of it. But clients don't come to the therapist to do paperwork.
For sure.
Yeah.
They come to have their problems worked through.
Yeah, absolutely. And character creation is fantastic as a therapeutic exercise. It's so good, as we'll talk about in a little while. But reading through a book and saying, okay, so if I roll that, that means I've got this stat here. Should I choose that feat or that feat? Oh, yeah, it gets a bit long-winded after a while.
For sure. So what do you think is the most interesting thing that you have learned while using RPGs with your patients? Like what do you think is the oddest takeaway that you've picked up from this whole experience?
Ooh. The oddest takeaway is that it doesn't matter how. This is nothing that DMs haven't noticed already, but it doesn't matter how crazy you expect things to get. it'll get crazier. I mean, I answered a post in Professor Dungeon Master's Facebook group the other day. Somebody said, what's your favorite spell?" And I put down that a client came up with a spell that just made people swear.
Like
You
cursing?
know, yeah, just
Okay.
drop the F bomb randomly. Yeah,
Wonderful.
yeah. Um, uh, but also it is so applicable to so many different areas. People come along, and if you're prepared to use your imagination, put some work in, they'll just come. It'll work.
Right.
Just try it.
So, what do you find is the like what are some of the more extreme? Is that the right word? Feel free to
Huh?
cancel me in the comments chat if I'm saying something that's completely ridiculous. Um, what do you find to be like the most extreme or difficult like mental disorders that you are treating successfully with this modified RPG system? And
Um,
what's your experience with that in general? Like, have
well,
you like? I guess it's two part. Like, what are some of the more difficult things that you've had to treat, and like what modifications have you had to make to the game, and what kind of experience do you find as like as a pattern that comes about with that type of patient? And obviously I'm not asking about like specific patients or anything. I don't want to violate anyone's personal issues, but
no, yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Um, well, I think before we answer that particular question, I
Okay.
think we do need to make a distinction right at the well, not top of the hour, but 8 minutes into the hour, um, that this is going to be a conversation of two halves, and it's not going to be clean. It's not going to be one half and then the other. I'm afraid it's going to be batting back and forth between the two. You've got RPGs being used in therapy
Mm-hmm.
by a professional therapist, counselor, psychologist, etc. And you've got people playing D&D, Spire, Avatar, BESM, and getting therapeutic benefits from them.
Okay.
And we should never confuse the two with each other. If you're a dungeon master, you get together with your friends, and one of your friends saying, "Oh, I'm feeling a bit low this week." Do not try and think, "Okay, I'm going to use D&D to help these people."
Right, right. That's actually something I want to come back to in a little bit, by the way.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a topic I wanted to talk about is like thinking about using D&D as therapy when you're not trained. But anyway, go ahead.
Yeah. Well, no, we'll absolutely we can come back to that. But
Yeah, yeah.
just I wanted to make sure that people are under no illusions that if you're not trained, don't do this. Just please, for the love of God, don't do it. Give the book to a trained professional. Great, happy. Just let them do the psychotherapeutic work. You just have fun.
Right.
That's your job, is to have fun. So back to your question. The complex issues do. I mean, the difficulty in answering that question is there's no such thing as a single variant. I've had people come along with massive drug and alcohol issues, and they're very complex. But I've also spoken to people who've got personality disorders who have been very complex, and people who've just got depression, which is very complex. And
Sure.
so I think the key takeaway for all of it is that as a therapist, you've got to work with the client in front of you, and that means um, there's no cheating. You can't just say, "Okay, I'm going to break out the Dragon of Ice Spire Peak, and that's going to work unedited for every client."
Sure.
Job done. Because it's not going to work like that. One client is going to come along and is just going to look at it and go, I don't like dragons," and it doesn't matter how great that particular campaign would be, they're just not going to engage with you or the game, which means they're just not going to get anything out of it. If you do manage to get them engaged, though, so far I've had pretty not I'm not going to say universal success because that's just tempting fate, but
Sure.
if I don't for a minute suggest that you use RPGs with all of your clients. I certainly don't. But all the ones I do use it with, I've assessed their needs. I've decided, yeah, this could be good. Would you like to try it? And when they say yes, it's worked all the way. And again, it's if you keep the client's needs in mind from step one, you're going to help them.
Right.
And that's, I don't know if that answers your question,
Uh,
but
I guess I'm just curious, like, what kinds of modifications. So you brought up you've worked with people who have personality disorders and people who suffer from depression. What is there anything in particular that you find yourself like designing adventures for or designing the game around that is specific to those things? I'm curious to talk
I
about.
see.
Yeah, I'm curious, like, what about certain adventure designs or encounter designs aid your ability to conduct therapy for specific afflictions, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, first off, as we mentioned a few moments ago, the character creation process is excellent for working with just about any quote unquote condition
Right.
because that means that because right from the get-go we're making it about the client. The client gets to make all the decisions and they get to relate to the character in the way that, again, we all know. We've all related to our characters
Mm-hmm.
very strongly, and that that works straight away for them. And when you design uh, adventures, scenarios, dungeons for that particular character, you're taking into consideration both that character's story, because I focus a lot on relationships and hopes and fears,
Mm-hmm.
because oddly enough, they're therapeutic considerations.
For
And
sure.
funny that. Um, and so you think about those things, the relationships, like how does the character feel about mum and dad, because that will somehow reflect on how the client feels about mum and dad.
Okay.
And then when you've got, so say for example, somebody with drug and alcohol issues, you design a scenario where either the character is tempted with things, or more likely they'll come into contact with somebody who is struggling with similar things.
Okay.
So you'll meet an NPC who is always drinking and staggers home, needs help, and the next question is really, okay, well, what would you say to that person to help them?
Mm.
Because we all know how much easier it is to give advice to other people.
Sure. But then you also it sounds like you're also creating like a safe opportunity because the character, like you said, is in a lot of ways a reflection of ourselves.
Mhm.
So you're vicariously giving advice to yourself effectively.
Yeah,
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's where it gets really exciting. You can see
Right.
all of the you can just see what the client or the player just realize, oh, yeah, so if I can say that to them, it might apply to me.
Right.
And
So
I
it's
had one client a while ago who couldn't make decisions, hated making decisions. So I just got him to walk through a forest and said, okay, so there's a tree in front of you. Do you go left or go right? That's not a big decision.
sure.
But to begin with, it was really hard. But then just noticing that, oh yeah, I'm making all these decisions and nothing's happening. The world isn't ending.
Right.
And just getting all of these little experiences just from an arm's length, an arm's distance, just that way, if anything goes wrong, it's the character's problem. The
Oh,
character's the one.
right. 'Cause and if anything does go wrong, like, I assume you're still using dice to some capacity. Like, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
obviously I'm using dice.
Okay, good. You need a bigger bag
Come
and
on.
more dice, as everybody in the chat, by the way.
Oh, you think
Donate
that's all of
to
it.
the Mental Health Foundation if you feel like you do not have enough dice. But I like how, like, I don't want to use the word blame, but you can like shift the focus onto the like because it's such a vicarious experience. You can shift that air quote blame. I don't know what's the better word here. You know the
It's risk taking,
yeah,
isn't it? It's
you
all
shift the
about taking
risk
risks.
onto the safety of the character and put it off of yourself, but also get to experience the risk firsthand.
Yeah,
So yeah, it's a really interesting situation. So
it's awesome.
yeah, so I've got a few questions here, but tell me, like, what was your motivation for writing this book? Like, who do you think are like your target readers of the book? Do you like, I brought you on to just talk about mental health more in generally, but you did publish this book. Um, like, do you think that there's stuff here that your average D&D player will get use out of?
I really hope so. Is the
Okay,
quick and easy answer to that. Again, making the distinction, if you're not a therapist, do not try and use it as therapy. But so the reason I wrote it was because, as I mentioned, not all of them, but the vast majority of RPGs are not designed for client work. As I say, most therapists are trained to speak one to one. You give your clients 50-minute sessions once a week, and you see them for a while. That is not enough time to, like I say, have a full blown Curse of Strahd campaign
sure.
once a week.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And so I just boiled down everything to a ridiculously simple system,
Sure.
and just geared everything towards, well, how can I get therapeutic benefits for my client out of this scenario? And then I realized, well, if this is working for me, I think it's excellent. I think it could help a lot of other people. But the only way it's going to work is if other therapists who aren't gamers, who aren't traditionally, they don't come home from the office and go, oh yeah, I can't wait to roll up a few characters tonight.
Right.
Oh, dice. Ooh. They're the people we need to get invested in the idea. So, and the only way we're going to do that is if we make the book dead simple.
Sure.
Make sure we point out all of the, okay, yeah, you can use this to help people, you can use this to help people, you can use this to help people. But the nice side effect from that is that because the book is written for people who haven't got a clue how to play RPGs but want to play an easy RPG.
Sure.
So therefore, if you ignore all of the psychobabble about, parasocial relationships, projection, empathy, and all that, there is actually a lot in there that if you just want to play games, you can use. But
Okay.
again, hashtag, you're not a therapist.
Right.
Just because you got the book. But yeah, because the book itself is, the RPG system is, you roll a die or a couple of dice, or it's not even system agnostic, it's dice agnostic. If you've only got a couple of d6s hanging around the house, use them. If you've got a d20, use that.
Right.
If you've got a stupid number of dice, make up your own system.
Sure.
Make up a system where you use a d4, a d12, and a d34 or whatever.
Get some Dungeon
Crawl
Classics dice, yeah.
Oh God. I'm going down a DCC rabbit hole at the moment. I like it.
Yeah, where's
it's
Bob
wild
World
magic.
Builder? Let's get him in here. He's a big DCC guy.
So there's that, but actually the majority of the book is how to tell a story.
Okay.
And I came into this as a fiction writer first and foremost. I mean, the first RPG I ever played was actually a writing exercise, a play-by-post game. And so I kind of, my argument, my thesis, if you want, for the book is that for any story to work, and this applies to film, books, and RPGs, you need three main factors. You need a character, you need a setting for the character to wander around in, and you need an obstacle to stand between your character and whatever they want.
Right.
Obviously, the character creation process creates the character. Whilst you're creating that character with the client, you're automatically creating the world around them. If the client says they're playing a dragonborn sorcerer, then okay, yeah, you're living in a fantasy world. What does the fantasy world look like?
Sure.
Where do they live? And then the obstacle can be anything from, okay, I've got drug and alcohol issues to there's a troll wandering down the road, and I feel like hitting it. Why not?
Right.
And once you engage the clients, once you've engaged the players, that's all there is, and you just go through the cycle of those three. Your character does something, the setting changes, the obstacle does something, again the character does something. If you just keep that process going, it is as simple as that. Just
Right.
it's RPG play by spreadsheet, which to a lot of us sounds, really? Oh, it's so
Right.
boring. No, but again, this is specifically for people who just haven't got a clue what you and I talk about when we mention Dungeon Crawl Classics,
Right.
for example.
Yeah.
So if you want to want a system that will work with absolutely anybody, absolutely any setting, piss easy to run, yeah, you will get stuff out of this.
Okay.
Just as long as you don't go, I'm gonna work. I'm gonna talk about my friend's daddy issues tonight.
Okay, so that's a good point to segue. Something that I have anecdotally noticed personally, and other event organizers have also shared with me. I've had at least half a dozen event organizers all share this. Is you will inadvertently have somebody who shows up to an organized event play, and whether they recognize they're doing it or not, and I would like to believe that they're totally unaware of what's actually going on. Usually you find somebody who is experiencing some sort of like serious depression or anxiety or something. Like there's clearly something,
Trauma.
some sort of trauma or mental disorder going on. And they sit down at like a D&D convention. They sit down to play a game, and it suddenly becomes very clear that the person has some sort of issue that they are working through on their own at the table with everyone else there. And I've something that like I have noticed is that because we tend as humans to err on the side of trying to foster a friendly and safe environment for everyone to experience games in, generally most people are just, take the, it's uncomfortable for me. And they feel like if they say something about it, that, it's just like, oh, well, you're just being, an asshole for just not enduring a little bit of discomfort because their character's a little weird. But I've seen it happen more and more times where it gets carried away and it is extremely uncomfortable for players at the table. What advice would you give to players or dungeon masters or event coordinators where it's clear that somebody is playing a game and the character is clearly trying to do self-therapy in an organized play session like that? Like it's like their character is extremely fixated on like some sort of childhood issue, or extremely fixated on something else that is clearly very personal to them. What advice would you give to an event coordinator to like threading the needle of, one, you got to make sure that the person who is struggling, like clearly there's something going on here, they're struggling, but then also you don't want their struggle to make everyone else feel like unsafe or further the complication of trauma, because if they're not trained professionals, their reaction could be even more damaging. So what's the right way to handle that?
I see. As soon as you added that, I was like, yeah, there's no right or wrong way to handle these things. Come on. Come on. Oddly enough, whilst you were talking, and this is very much a counselor-y thing to say, I felt a lot of empathy for that person who just come down and was working out all their childhood issues. I was like, oh no, that's really sad. And I think you mentioned it yourself a few minutes ago, how it doesn't matter how hard we try, so much of ourselves ends up in our characters.
Mm-hmm.
And of course it will, because it doesn't matter how hard we try, we've only got our own frames of reference to go with. So when we create a character and we're thinking about that character's relationships with their parents, well, the only experience we have to go on is our relationship with our parents, our childhoods, our backgrounds. And if they're coming in and they are doing it specific, if they're coming in, right, I'm going to use this as a place to work out my issues, that is really not okay.
Yeah,
if they're doing it unconsciously, if they don't realize they're doing it, that's tragic, but it's still not great.
Right. Yeah, and
so,
like my own anecdotal experience, whenever I've seen it personally, it's been clear to me that they didn't realize how jarring and uncomfortable like their character backstory is about having a them wanting to be this mother of orphans because they had a traumatic foster home experience or something, and it suddenly comes out at the table, and they're just not aware that they're doing it or that it's uncomfortable. But yeah, like as the event coordinator, what do you do?
Well, first of all, you've got to realize that it's uncomfortable for other people. I mean, if you're the event coordinator, you're probably running around half a dozen different tables, and you need to get the information. Oh, this is happening, and it's uncomfortable. So first step in the process is, if you're a player in that particular game under those circumstances and you're finding it difficult, first step is probably just have a chat with the player. Say, look, are you okay? Can we potentially not do this? Because a big thing that's coming into a lot of games these days are things like safety mechanisms. You've got the X card, you've got lines, you've got fails. As a DM or a GM, to be agnostic, make sure you start with those. Make sure that you have those in place, as part of the game's expectations. If we have something that's making us uncomfortable, it doesn't matter who we are, what the reasons are, put your hand up, draw the X card, whatever system works for you. And we will either A, talk it out, or B, just move on to the next thing. If this individual is reasonable, and as you say, just completely oblivious to the idea that they're doing it, they just think they're playing, and it just happens to be the way their imagination went, they'll go along with that, and because they don't want to upset people, they're there to have a good time as well.
100%.
If I go to a convention and sit down for a game, I'm not going to go there going, oh yeah, how uncomfortable can I make people today? I mean, actually,
there are a few D&D players I know who would do that just to be trolls. I used to be one of them when I was a young man. I think we've all done things that made us assholes when we were kids. But
you mean you stopped? Oh, okay.
I mean, I've just changed. I have a matured palate. I know.
I got told off by the editor of the book because I left a couple of fart jokes in the book. That's.
So you've regressed to being a 4-year-old then.
I never stopped being a 4-year-old. Come on. So quote unquote safety mechanisms have become a big thing in recent years, specifically because of scenarios like this. Use them. And one thing I will make a point of saying is there are no safety mechanisms in my book. Simply because it's designed to be read by therapists, and telling a therapist how to keep their clients safe in a gaming environment might have been a bit insulting. If just a little bit. So I don't have any of those in my book, but they're in just about every book nowadays.
Okay.
You've got Thirsty Sword Lesbians, Die, Spire, Heart.
Right.
It's make use of them.
I think you just touched on something there that I think many dungeon masters in that kind of adventure league scenario, like or whatever organized play we're in, is that, you know, those kinds of safety mechanisms, even if it's just the social contract of we're all sitting down at the player and we're all here to have a good time, and the DM says, hey guys, we need to take a break for a second, I gotta have a chat with one of the players. Like, even if it's just that, like, and, I mean, that's personally what I do. That's how I handle these kinds of situations. I find all the other stuff really gimmicky, because I can just, yeah, I can just be the bull in the china shop. But yeah. But I think,
as
like,
a therapist, if that were to happen, I mean, as a therapist, that's what I want to happen,
right,
with my clients,
right. But I think what's interesting is that, like, you said it would be, you know, offensive or insulting to have safety mechanisms in the book, because the whole point is to explore the dangerous and risky stuff through RPGs. But, you know, just
to clarify something.
Sure.
It's not necessarily because of that. It's because, you know, if you're a therapist, you should already know how to keep your clients safe.
Right.
If your client is having a nervous breakdown in front of you, you should, you know, if you're a therapist, know not to push it any harder and to make sure they're okay and to look after them.
Right.
You know, if you don't know that, then get out of the profession here and now, please.
Yeah, I guess the point I'm trying to make is that, like, just because we as dungeon masters may be seeing something at the table that, you know, on the, you know, it's really easy to say, okay, we're not going to have, like, any explicit sexual activity in a public game. Like, obviously that's just something that, you know, unless you're specifically going for that kind of game, you know, to each their own, do whatever you want. But, like, bringing that kind of stuff at the table is a no-go, and in an organized play scenario. So, like, it's easy for us as dungeon masters to say, oh no, your character's being super, like, sexually creepy, you've got to knock that off, right? Like, those are clear boundaries that are already set. But I think, like, something you're touching on here is that we as dungeon masters need to give ourselves that added permission to say, something has just entered the uncanny valley, and I don't necessarily even need to explain it, but I can see the lack of comfort at the table. We just need to take a pause, right? And just because you can't fully explain it with, like, the typical status quo kind of, you know, oh, you were being sexually explicit, or you were being obscenely violent, or you were being, you know, XYZ, whatever, you know, you were taking it beyond PG-13 in a clear-cut way. It doesn't have to be clear-cut. You can just say, we need to stop because this is getting weird.
The key word in all of this is boundaries.
You're right.
You know, and that is something that we as therapists are trained from day one to get right. Because if you don't get the boundaries right in therapy, you're not doing your job properly.
Right.
But socially, we've got boundaries as well. I don't want to watch my parents having sex. Jesus.
Oh, God. Let's get the stream
demonetized. That is a boundary that I will really thank them not to breach. Likewise, you know, whilst I'm playing a game, I don't want, you know, with the nicest will in the world, I don't want to hear about how your parents rejected you whilst I'm playing.
Right.
As, you know, as in private. That isn't the place to go. And if these individuals do have issues, I don't know, maybe they came out to their parents and the parents reacted badly. That's traumatic. That is an awful experience. And it, you know, they have every right to want to feel better about it. But that it's not fair to kind of put the other people at the table in that position. Take it to your therapist. Say, I'd like to play an RPG with you and work through some stuff. Absolutely.
Sure.
But there's this thing called vicarious trauma. And if you're bringing your trauma to the table, even if you don't realize it and even if you don't mean to, it's still possible to traumatize the other people around the table.
Exactly. And that's what we as dungeon masters in those situations should be working to avoid, is causing further harm. Yeah.
As long as you're not a dick about it, as long as you're reasonable and say, look, this we weren't going to go here, so can we just not, please, if that's all right?
Right.
And if they're not a dick about it, they go, oh, really? I didn't mean it, sorry. Then you haven't got a problem.
Sure.
If either of those parties do behave a bit dickishly, that's when you've got an issue. That's when you need
Well,
to
that's
get
when you
the
got to
event
kick somebody out.
coordinator in.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or remove yourself. Just say,
Sure.
look, maybe I'm the problem here. I
Sure.
don't
Sure.
know. But communication in all of these scenarios is
Of
the
course.
key point. Counseling is a talking therapy, and role-playing games is, it's often described as a communal storytelling, which is a talking
Talking
pastime.
game. Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure.
And if we can be nice to each other, empathetic, just say, it looks like you're struggling a bit. Are you okay? Why don't you go and get yourself a coffee and
Right.
come back when you're feeling a bit better? Just be nice to each other. Remember, kids, be nice to each other.
Okay, so Tiernan Coas had a good follow-up question. If somebody approached their DM to say that the sessions were unintentionally acting as therapy for them due to the themes being explored, is that something that the DM should continue now that they are aware of it, or should they avoid those themes because they're not well-trained in the matter?
I mean, that's an awesome question.
That's
and
a fantastic question.
Yeah. And I said to you before before we started recording, whilst we were trying to get recording, I said to you, your viewers are really insightful. You've got some fantastic questions. Just wait. I was reading through them last night. Oh God, that's so good.
Yeah, I'm really happy of the quality of people that this channel has endeared. It's great.
Yeah, how did you manage it? I mean, look at you.
I know, right?
A tie.
I mean, not right now, but I am in a polo. But anyway.
Yeah. I think I began by saying, so there are two options. You've got a therapist using RPGs and the RPG being therapeutic. If you're playing an RPG and it's therapeutic, that is amazing.
Right.
It only becomes a problem if you start intentionally going, okay, I'm going to do this because Pat has come along and said, oh, I found that really therapeutic. I liked it, so I'm going to do more of that. Because then you're intentionally messing with somebody's head.
Right.
And
you're monkeying with the dynamic of the game design too.
Yeah, absolutely. And if they found it, what a particular episode, session, dungeon, what have you, if they found it therapeutic and they felt comfortable enough to come and speak to you about it, I mean, that is what better relationship to have between a DM and their players. They feel able to come and talk to you about stuff like that. I mean, that's just beautiful in and of itself.
Cool. Yeah.
But just keep on doing what you do. If they carry on finding it therapeutic, wonderful. If you try and do something else, I'm sure they'll be fine. As a DM, don't feel obliged to do something because they found it therapeutic. That's A, dangerous, and B, as you said, could well be detrimental to the story you're telling, to the adventure, the sandbox, however you're type.
Right.
Just keep on playing, and
right.
they will keep on getting the benefits out of it. I mean, it's therapeutic just spending time with your friends for a few hours. You come away feeling good. That's a therapeutic benefit. As soon as you, as a dungeon master, start saying, right, I'm going to do this because I want to impact somebody's mental state, that's not okay.
That's not, yeah. Okay. Cool.
Please don't.
Yeah, that's good. So earlier, Alexander Asperu asked, what makes RPGs better at this specifically as opposed to like an outdoor sport or playing a board game or some other form of gaming? I guess we're getting into viewer questions now.
Oh, are we? Okay.
Yeah.
So only in as much as again, for most therapists, it's difficult to take your clients out and play a football game.
Sure.
You know, so go along. And how do you feel about that? You know,
Right.
tell me about what it was like growing up. You know, so what? Um, but again, if we're looking at the incidental benefits of the activity, then there isn't a whole lot of difference. You know, if you enjoy and get happiness out of sport, then continue to do sport and be happy.
Cool.
Um, the reason the book is about is this is an extra tool that therapists can use, and some therapists do go on walking sessions with their clients, but in the UK the weather isn't always conducive to
Right.
outdoor
Lots of
activities.
rain.
Ugh, or just disgustingly hot, and we don't have any air conditioning.
Right.
Um, but outside of the therapy room, you've got to do what makes you feel good. It's all, self-care is a huge factor that a lot of people, specifically in the West, have forgotten about. You know, we're too busy stuck in our little coffins of an office and just not speaking to people. So getting together, playing an RPG, it feels good because it's doing us good. The same from playing football, playing soccer, going out for a drink. Just keep doing it and feel good and enjoy life.
Right.
But you can't. It would be wholly unethical for a therapist to say, "Do you know what? Shall we go down for a pint down the pub?" And then 2 o'clock in the morning, yeah, well, we should go home now, shouldn't we? Yeah, I think if your therapist asks you to do that, you might want to
See a different therapist.
Yeah, yeah.
So you kind of touched on this, and I'm going through the questions now. That because I put up a community chat or a community tab post asking for questions about 3 weeks ago or so. But somebody asked a really insightful question. Because dungeon masters typically will devote themselves to fostering a particular kind of experience for their players. And they specifically asked, like, how healthy is it to devote yourself to other people's experience at the table frequently at your own experience? Like, there is a bit of a trade-off there where, as dungeon masters, and this is something that I've experienced a lot, where it just led to burnout in general.
Yeah.
But if you can speak, more intelligently than I could about
I can talk intelligently.
about how
so special.
about how that kind of trying to foster a very particular kind of experience that your players want, even if it might not be the kind that you want at the table, or that you are less desirous of than something else. Like I know personally for me, I burned out because I did that with one group where I was just constantly trying to run the game that they were interested in, and it just got to the point where a couple years later I couldn't do it anymore, and I was like, I gotta quit. That's it. And now I very selfishly, this is the game I'm running. Either you're in or you're not.
You see, instantly I'm picking up. Yeah, how is that selfish? You just saying, right, this is what I need. That's
right.
Not selfish. That's looking after your own needs.
Right.
And oh god, I can feel myself going into counselor mode here. Just
it's a live counseling session. Everyone, you get to watch therapy in action here.
and how do you feel about that?
Yeah, exactly.
The reason we all play D&D, DCC, or etc., is because we get enjoyment out of it.
Right.
As soon as we stop getting enjoyment out of it, that becomes work. That becomes a job that we have to pay for. I'm not going to waste my Wednesday evenings doing something I'm not enjoying. And you're absolutely right. It's an epidemic, I would say, of people just thinking, my sole existence is to make other people happy. Because we're all brought up to go, oh no, don't upset other people. It's like what you mentioned earlier. If somebody comes to the game and you feel uncomfortable, our instinct is to sit with it because you don't want to upset anybody else. Instinctively, we'd rather sit with the discomfort than risk offending somebody else.
Right.
But if you live your life like that's exhausting. And as you say, you're gonna get burned out. People, the the people who tend to gravitate towards the role of DM are the ones who are willing to put the work in to please other people. And as soon as you stop looking after your own needs and you think solely of your players' needs, that's an unhealthy dynamic. And your players wouldn't want that for you.
For sure.
If you came to your players and said, guys, I'm hating this. If they turned around and said, well, tough, you're going to carry on playing, they aren't great friends.
Right. Yeah. They aren't your friends as far as I'm concerned.
No.
Yeah. No decent friend would say something like that. Yeah.
No. I mean, we've played, me and my group, we've played several game systems over the years. And whenever our GM isn't enjoying it, he'll say it. And it's like, well, yeah, Pat, we're not going to make you play something you don't want to play. Give us something and we're happy. The most important part of an RPG is the interpersonal relationships, getting to meet your friends, just talk about the weather and enjoying life. As soon as it becomes work, it isn't worth it. Would be my take on the issue.
Right. For sure.
A lot of my job is helping people learn to just have a rest, give themselves a bit of self-care. Just say, okay, you're doing all this work. What have you done just to relax? Okay, do more of that.
Right. Do more of the relaxing parts.
But I picked up a great phrase from one of my clients recently. Shut up, eat a donut.
Shut up and eat a donut. I like that. I mean,
Oh,
I don't
geez.
need those carbs, but I will eat some of the what is the Halo Top ice cream? The guilt-free ice cream. It's like you can eat a whole half pint, or is it a pint for like
stuff that
for like 300 calories.
If you're gonna die of something, it might as well be donuts.
I generally don't like sweet things all that much. Okay, so I'm just going through the questions here. Are there any questions?
Doesn't help for you.
Are there any questions in that community post that you found were really interesting to you that you wanted to talk about? I'm just kind of going through them now.
So many of them are so good. So is cross-gender roleplay in TTRPGs a valid form of gender-affirming care? Yes.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. I mean, a lot of, it's done in schools with kids. Just, let's just play a game, and have you ever read the Die comic?
No, I've
Kieran
not.
Gillen.
I don't generally read comics.
Me, well, I was about to say me either, but no, that would be a complete lie. Rowan Rook and Deckard have just released an RPG associated with that comic, and the whole point of the comic is people from this world go into a fantasy world via playing an RPG, and one of the blokes in this world morphs into a woman in that world because he's working things out.
Right.
And yeah, you can just we know how easy it is to relate to our characters. And so if we're one gender and we're making our character a different gender, it's not going to be exactly the same as experiencing it, obviously, but we can ask questions, we can experiment. And that same goes for social skills. A lot of neurodivergent clients get massive amounts out of RPGs. I'm currently working with a charity over here called CareQuest, which is doing RPGs with mostly autistic clients who frequently find it very difficult to empathize with people, difficulty reading social cues. So you drop them in an RPG and say, okay, well, this NPC has come along and is behaving like this. What does your character perceive things? How does your character perceive things? How do you perceive it? And it's just witnessing different ways of being, again, from a bird's eye view, just that arm's length vicarious learning. And yeah, you can do that for even things like maths. You've got to roll dice and add numbers. Learn maths.
Right.
But yeah, so that's a fantastic one. I think I also saw one about work if you can use it with your if you're a parent and you can use it with your kids. I'm sure I saw. I'll no doubt find it after we've.
Yeah. After the stream's ended.
Yeah, but if it is there, then yes, absolutely you can. The way to do it, just let them play. Just have fun and let them play. Let them ask questions. Let them be silly.
Right.
That's when you're a parent working with kids, not working with kids, but playing with your kids. That is what you want. The attachment relationship between child and parent is supremely important for life. I mean, and or attachment figure, and foster that. Just give them a place to play, be themselves, accept them for who they are, know that they aren't going to be judged, and let them just run around and be lunatics for a little while.
Right.
That's that's your main role, and they will love every minute of it just because they're spending time with you. If you want to do specific exercises with them, yes, there are certain exercises, but it's a bit late in the day for us to go through all of those. But yeah, play therapy is a thing, and yeah, so many things. Like you see you're walking down the road and you see two people fighting. What do? That's a life lesson there.
For sure,
that's helping your kids learn. But yeah, we could go on for hours about how to work with your own children. Oh, if you can get them to sit down with you. My son knows that I love RPGs and refuses point blank to have anything to do with them just because he knows.
Just because of that. That's so funny. How old is he?
He's 15.
Oh, that's why.
If you want.
Hilarious.
Oh, he's He just like, oh yeah, you like it, do you? I'm not doing it.
Yeah, just to be the rebellious teenager.
Yeah.
There were a few questions. One that jumped out at me was asked by D Gargoyle. How do you approach character building with your players / clients? Like what makes that unique compared to a typical, session 0 where everyone's building characters together?
Yeah, so as I mentioned earlier, the big problem you have with D&D, for example, is just how bleeding long it takes to put your character together. So that was job one of day one.
Sure.
Just hacking it down so that you can put a character together in 5 minutes. Tend to start off by establishing what genre the client wants to play. If they want to play a mecha, a sci-fi adventure, there's no point saying that they've got to create a wizard. So you have that chat, that'll take a few seconds. Then you work through the basics of my character is a Dragonborn sorcerer, a Gundam pilot, a caped superhero, whatever. Give them a few characteristics just to make them unique, and then for the therapeutic work, it is very much a case of let's focus on the characters' relationships and outlook. What are things they hope for life? What are they afraid of? And because that's therapeutically, that's where a lot of the work lies.
Okay. As opposed to like 5th edition, you just roll up like, what is it, like boons and relationships or traits or something like that. Like it's a 1d8 roll according to your background. But that's something that you would specifically really drive in or nail in on in a therapeutic sense.
They can roll for it if they want. They can just choose it. It's all about the engagement. And if they engage from the randomness of it, do random. If they've really got a set idea of they want to do, go with it. Let them do it. But the key is the relationships and the outlook. I want to settle down with the family. That if that's what the character wants, then that implies that that's something the player, the client, thinks is a good thing, even if that's not necessarily what they want straight away. It's something they view as a good thing. If they give the character something they're frightened of, even if the client isn't frightened of that thing, it implies that it's not something that the client is a fan of, for example.
Sure.
And you can the character creation process is just amazing as it is. But yeah, that tends to be where I focus my attention. My eye of Sauron is always, okay, yeah, tell me more about your relationships. How does that make you feel? Go on.
Right.
But also giving them just lots of fun. Just I mentioned the swearing spell earlier. Yeah, that
Right.
was created during the character creation process. I said, okay, let's just give your character a couple of just signature abilities that he can do that nobody else can do, and that was I want to be able to make people swear.
So
He
that's
was
so bizarre. So interesting
no,
that they would pick that.
again, he's given me permission to talk about this. So he was a teenager,
Yeah.
and he would have, working with an adult. Teenagers generally, if they swear, get told off, and so
For sure.
that
Yeah.
was just his way of just testing boundaries.
Interesting.
Can
Okay.
I say the F word, and is he going to tell me off? He's not going to tell me off. Oh,
Right.
wow.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
and
That's funny.
it's great. It's amazing, and I had one client whose character could cast spells with their eyes, and the first time I asked them to roll anything, they looked at some bad guys. They only had D10s, and they rolled 00. And I was like, that was the first roll of the game. I was like, okay, yeah, tell me what your eyes do to that entire army that's coming towards you right now.
Right.
Awesome.
That's fun.
Yeah,
So
it is, and that is the key thing. It's just having fun.
yeah.
Because for a lot of people, therapy is the thought of going to therapy every week is, all right, I've got to kind of sit down for an hour with this really serious person who's going to make me think a lot of bad things. Yay.
Right.
Whereas
So
if you play an RPG, it's like, oh my god, I get to chop off a dragon's head this week.
right, exactly. It's also like you are like it's fun because you are, as opposed to intimidating, because you are allowing someone to vicariously experience their problems without having to feel like they have to be vulnerable. If that makes sense.
That is the magic of the whole approach. And
Right.
I do use this example in just about every interview or talk I give. But I had a very young man, 11, come to me. He developed selective mutism at school through anxiety. Just the thought of talking to people terrified him.
Right.
Poor little guy. He came along, was really struggling to engage. You could see he was trying, but he just couldn't get beyond a yes. Just really muttered one syllable answer.
Right.
So we put a character together. I introduced him to the scenario. Said, you walk into town, you see a man over there comes along. I played, a bit of dialogue, say the NPC talking to his character, and just said to him, okay, so what does your character say? And instantly the kid was talking.
Oh, wow, that's so great.
It was phenomenal because he wasn't the one doing the talking. The character
was doing it. Right.
So if anything bad was going to happen, it was going to happen to the character.
Right.
And obviously nothing did happen. And as time went by, he realized, oh, hang on. If the character's talking, that means I'm talking. Nothing bad's happening.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
We all have moments as therapy. Anybody who's a therapist watching will know that we have moments that just change our professional lives, and that really was one.
That's awesome. That's
so good.
Yeah.
And that's the power of this as an intervention. And this is why we're saying earlier, if you're not trained, you've got to be careful, because that's how big an impact it can have.
Right. You can get an 11-year-old who's a mute to actually start talking seriously. That's great.
So good.
So,
and the character was awesome as well. He kept defeating monsters, but never killing them, just beating them just so it would stop attacking people, and then made friends with them.
Oh, that's so funny.
It was lovely.
That's great.
So good. So good.
So I'm just going through some of the questions here, just to pivot to something that's a little. I guess we could call it pop psychology question, air quotes around the psychology, or at least that's how I'm interpreting it. Maybe the commenter.
How worried should I be here?
Yeah, exactly. Are murder hobos repressing anger? Let's talk about murder hoboism a little bit.
I am a huge murder hobo, not because I just see somebody and kill them, but because my job, I spend all my day doing this. Right. Okay. When I play, I don't want to have to think too much.
Right.
It's like, okay, I've got a spear. Right. Okay. The orc's coming at me. Yeah, 18. Yeah, job done. Okay. I was dead. Cool. Yeah, that's how many temporary hit points. Job. Yeah.
Right.
Murder hobos. I sit in solidarity with you. But possibly, just if I had a client who came along and their first instinct was to kill everything, it could mean that they're just having fun.
Right.
Or it could mean that they're acting out. Maybe they're being bullied and they just want to get back at bullied. Part of it is going to be in the how they are murdering the hobo kind of thing, as in
right.
if it is, oh god, this is just so cool,
yeah.
Oh, I chop his head off, yeah. Oh no, now I chop his leg off, then beat him to death with his leg.
Yeah, if it's clearly grindhouse horror comedy level type thing. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
But when they start getting into like really dark and twisted,
that's
killing of animals.
Like, okay. Yeah. Okay. So what's going on for you whilst that's happening? That's right. For me as a therapist, prime material to go. Okay. So let's talk about this.
Mm-hmm.
For you as a player, this is the exact scenario we were talking about earlier. That shit's kind of like just can we just you guys just you go and get yourself a pint. We're just gonna have a quick sit down and say that's not great here. Okay. Just can we just not. Yeah. Thanks.
So we're just rolling through some of the questions. A username 27. Oh yeah, did you
pole arms?
Pole arms.
Cool.
Okay.
Pole arms. Something like does. Where is it? So you ask a question. I'm sure I'll find it.
Yeah. So somebody asked, what's the best use case for treating someone with role play? I'm also curious of the inverse of that. What kind of patient would you specifically not use role play with as well? Like what makes you, when a patient walks in, what makes you say, this is the person I'm going to use an RPG therapy with?
9 times out of 10, it's people who just really don't want to be in therapy.
Okay.
Either, they're there because their parents have sent them to you and they're just not interested in it, or just like they know they need help, but they just the thought of talking to some weird man is just like, I can't, because
right.
When we've been through trauma, it's too hard to talk about 9 times out of 10. It's just, why would you want to remember something that scarred you for life?
Mm-hmm.
You spent the past 20 years trying to forget about it. Why would you stop now? And so if we're just sitting there in uncomfortable silence, they're not getting anything out of that.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay, well, let's make this a bit more fun. Let's just I'll throw some goblins at you and you can chop their heads off. Let's just enjoy it and help you get into the session. So those are the people who this RPGs and intervention are just perfect for. If they're struggling to engage with the process, get out the dice.
That's cool. That's really insightful. Yeah. So
I'd be nervous about using it with people with difficulty perceiving reality, suffering from schizophrenia or something.
Okay.
I would be very wary of going, okay, yeah, so you find it hard to identify what the real world is. Yeah, do you know what? I'm going to introduce a fictional world to all of that.
Right.
I can see that going either badly or terribly.
Right.
You never know. It might be the way out. you'd have to be a braver therapist than me to try that, though.
Okay. Cool.
You know,
So the sim person asked, how does this compare to like cognitive behavioral therapy? And for those of us who may not know, can you give us like a 100-word crash course on what cognitive therapy is, or cognitive behavioral therapy is, and how this contrasts with?
oh
Uh,
Jesus, I don't think I'll be able to make 100 words.
okay,
So
200.
that was just mean. That was mean. There was
I
no
know,
there.
I know, I know.
So CBT, the main kind of underlying.
Are you there? Did we lose you? Are you muted? More technical issues. The stream has
Yep.
been total. There
No.
we go. You're good. I can hear you.
Yeah, sorry, I've got no idea what happened there. That was
Okay.
just life being life. So yeah, CBT looks at the relationship between cognitive, so thinking, emotions, and our behavior. Our literally what we do.
Sure.
And I think that there were actually a couple of questions about cognitive behavioral therapy, which I just loved. I thought, oh yeah. And a big part of CBT is identifying scenarios that make us feel anxious, depressed, angry, whatever the issue is.
Right.
You identify what the scenario is, you identify how bad the feelings are, and you identify what you're thinking typically in those circumstances. And once you've identified those, then you can start breaking the cycle, challenging those thoughts, putting in different thoughts. So an example would be, I touched a hot radiator once and burned my hand. And the lesson I'm taking from that is I must never be in a room with a radiator.
Mm.
Okay, so CBT would be, okay, well, we've identified where your fear of radiators comes from. How realistic is it that being in a room with a radiator is going to hurt you? And, by just, it's literally kind of therapy by spreadsheet. You go through the pros and cons, the evidence for, well, I touched the radiator and it hurt. Okay, well, that's a very valid reason why you don't want to be near a radiator. But are there other times perhaps where you've been in a room with a radiator and it hasn't hurt? I've got no idea why I'm fixating on radiators here, but let's just go with it. So the way RPGs work is, that's CBT in a nutshell, really, isn't it?
Right.
You're putting your character in a stress-inducing situation, and you're challenging the stress. So it's absolutely perfect. The two have a natural affinity for each other. And actually, one of the chapters in the book is looking how specific therapeutic approaches would work with RPGs, right. And there is a good portion there about CBT. But yeah, it's very much a case of I'm putting this character in a situation that makes me stressed. As we've established, it's much easier to do that than go into the situation ourselves.
Right.
And what's going on for the character? Okay, well, if that's happening for them, how do you feel about it now? Could you potentially learn from your character's behavior?
That's interesting.
Okay, so and RPGs are great for the projection,
right.
The vicarious learning, the parasocial relationships that became a big buzzword during the pandemic.
Right.
Practice, practicing social skills, practicing touching radiators, practicing just having fun. A lot of therapists work with the inner child, because a lot of people who had abusive upbringings or just were neglected as children just didn't get much fun as kids. And so, we work with the kid that's all, the 4-year-old in me who still loves fart jokes, and we're just playing the game. We're giving them what they need. We're letting them practice having fun. And what did we say earlier? If you're working too hard and getting burnt out being a DM, well, let's figure out how you can practice having fun as a DM.
Right.
Again.
Right.
And a lot of therapy is just practicing feeling better.
That makes sense, of course.
Yeah,
it seems obvious, but
Yeah, but if you spend all day being stressed, you're going to spend all day being stressed. But not being stressed is weird.
Right.
So we've got to kind of put a forced stop on the stress. Okay, let's do something to make you happy. Did that work? Okay, do that again.
That's interesting. That's so funny. Yeah. I like who is it? Kuru Findle says they're taking notes about a mimic radiator to put in their game. That's great.
Oh, wait, I'll never go into a room with the radiator again.
I know, right?
Oh my god, it looked at me.
It's a mimic. I'm gonna have like post traumatic stress from experiencing mimic radiators. Then now I will have this trauma that I live out in my daily life. Oh, that actually is a really interesting thing. Yeah, is that something that you've bumped into where like, or is that something that's relatively conceivable where something happens so traumatic in a game?
Mimic radiator. I think you've been doing this job too long.
Oh man.
Sorry, no. Could you repeat the question?
No, it's you know, I guess that might be something that's like you were talking about, somebody who has a looser grip on reality, like somebody who suffers from schizophrenia or perhaps a terrible bout with insomnia, and it causes them to hallucinate. Like,
I mean, yeah, under those circumstances, you wouldn't be doing this kind of stuff anyway, because
right.
you'd be fighting fire under those circumstances. Okay, yeah, right. We need to get you safe. You know, this isn't the time to do any of that stuff. We need to make sure that you're okay. If playing a game would help ground them, great,
right?
By all means. But under those circumstances, our job is to make sure that they're healthy enough to. You know, we've only got 50 minutes a week with these people.
Sure.
You know, our job is to do as much as we can to make sure that they can come next week and we can do the work then when they're feeling a bit better. So if you've got somebody who genuinely believes that the radiators are mimics, I would stay away from radiators and mimics, frankly, for a little while.
Right.
But yeah, just be sensible at the end of the day. You know, use your common sense.
Sure.
You and I both know that most of DMing is just don't be stupid. Be stupid, but don't be stupid.
Yeah, don't be that kind of stupid.
Be the right kind of stupid.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so chat, we're getting close to the end of our stream duration. Sans technical issues. I know we started an hour late. It's going to be fun to go back and edit this video in YouTube Studio later to cut off like the first 15 minutes of the nonsense.
I found the question though. Is it true that having more pole arms in a TTRPG correlates with stronger therapeutic results? Everything correlates with having more pole arms in a TTRPG.
There you go.
The number of times that I go, oh, if I had a sword, I'd be doing so much better, but I refuse because in real life, spears are better.
I mean, it's true. Spears are better in real life.
Yeah,
there's a reason why spears are used.
The player's handbook won't tell you that.
Yeah, I know, right? I just total aside here. I once got into an argument of somebody who completely quintessentially looked the part of a Reddit moderator. If you can just imagine that in your mind. I was in a Halloween store of all places and just made the passing comment about how, clearly spears are better because all of antiquity, like the shield and spear was the weapon of choice for
they're cheaper, they're
7,000 years, easier to train and more deadly. And this guy
much
popped
better
out
to keep your opponent 4 feet away from you instead
exactly
of
and somebody just popped up from behind the counter with the full fedora and everything and just let me have it. It was hilarious. Swords are better because actually, pushing the glasses up. Anyway, that's neither here nor there.
Okay. That guy, if you're watching, I'm available. I'm taking clients on at the moment, so by all means, give me a call. It sounds like you could do with a chat. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Because swords are beautiful. They're gorgeous. Don't get me wrong. But, sorry, just
spears
the Greeks,
are better.
the Romans, and then everybody else since then.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So let's see. Do we have any questions in the chat, guys? James Spawn says, "Can RPGs, often being power fantasies, have negative CBT type effects, like always being the hero or the good guy, leading to feelings or perceptions outside of the game that leads to like narcissism or extreme ego?" That's an interesting question.
It is an interesting question, but a lot of people, the word narcissism comes up so much these days. It's just become a byword. Oh yeah, I don't like that person, so they're narcissistic. It's like no, narcissism is it's its very own thing. You aren't. I mean, it's a spectrum in as much as we're all slightly narcissistic in as much as I'm going to put my interest before I'm going to put some rando I've never met before.
Sure.
But that isn't capital N narcissism, and you're not going to become a capital N narcissist by
Playing
something you
RPGs.
can't. No.
Right.
Um, if you did nothing but play power fantasies, I would be interested to know why you're playing nothing but power fantasies. That would be an avenue to explore.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not going to make you, as soon as you stop playing, go out and beat up the first person you see just because they looked. Oh, saying that. No, my uncle once punched a wall once because it looked at him funny. So that takes us back to the Mimics, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But then again, he was in the parachute regiment, and you've got to be mental to go into the parachute regiment.
Yeah,
anyway,
let's jump out of a completely perfectly good airplane.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
into a place where hostile enemies may be firing at you, and in due course.
He broke his neck once and didn't even realize.
Whoa!
I know.
Holy cow!
Just got up, carried on, and then some 20 years later, oh yeah, you broke your neck. I'm sorry, what?
Adrenaline's a heck of a drug, man.
Yeah. But
wow.
No, I wouldn't worry about that.
Okay.
It can certainly give you more confidence, which is a good thing.
Sure.
But you're not going to just become a narcissist. And a lot of people, back to that DM question, always doing stuff for other people, come to me and I say, well, you need to kind of do a bit more for you. And they say, yeah, but I'm worried that's going to make me selfish. You use that word at the beginning of the session today. And, you're not going to become more selfish because you're not going to let yourself become selfish. You're a thoroughly unselfish person. Looking after yourself isn't selfish. It's just basic needs, because if you don't start looking after yourself, you're going to collapse.
Right.
That's not selfish. That's just accepting the world we've got. But no, you're never going to let yourself become a selfish person, and you're never going to let yourself become a narcissistic person. It's just not in you. Yeah, you might come along and feel a bit better about things, but we're as much as I'd like to be able to cast magic, we still live in we do live in a mostly real world.
Mostly, yeah. I don't know what is the hyper reality, the Jean Baudrillardian hyper reality of social media, and also the globalized supply chain tricking us into believing that we have unlimited supply of everything all the time, even though it's just an extremely complicated economic supply chain that is so fragile and may fall apart at any minute. As we noticed, as we learned just a few years ago, and will likely learn very readily here next year. Yes. Check out my geopolitics videos here in just a little bit. But no,
best game for geopolitics. Twilight 2000.
Twilight 2000? I've never even heard of this. Is this a board game or a
You and
RPG?
I need to have words.
Twilight 2000? Okay. I'm going to look it up. Twilight 2000. All right, but anyway, my laptop battery
Twilight
is
2000.
Okay, I'll check it out.
Free League, come on.
Free League Publishing. So we're probably going to wrap it up here. Is there anything...
Got expansions.
Besides showing off this RPG, is there anything that you want to part with to the viewers? Any last things that you think you would want them to get out of considerations for RPGs and mental health?
First off, just thanks for the awesome questions. This has been... technical issues aside, this has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you. Even the technical issues were hilarious by the end. So,
yeah.
No,
it was super stressful for the first 15 minutes. I was like, it's not working. and then after 5 minutes later, I was like, whatever, it's not working.
Yeah,
we'll figure it
out. So no, thank you for coming along and asking questions. That's awesome. But I would kind of just like to reiterate that duality. If you're playing games with your friends, you don't need to try and behave like a therapist, because what you are doing is therapeutic. You are a friend being there for your friends. that in itself is more than some people have. Just give it to them. Just be there. If they want to talk about a fight they had with their partner, yeah, let them talk about that.
Mm-hmm.
Just be there. Whatever you do, don't start messing with people's heads, because you're going to hurt them, you're going to hurt the people at the table, and you might well end up hurting yourself. You know, that vicarious trauma we were talking about earlier. If they start talking about the time they were abused as a child, you'll pick up on those emotions and you'll go away feeling like crap. So
Right.
just treat it as a game and get what benefits you can from it, because you will get them without even trying.
Sure.
Side on the other hand, if you want to go to therapy but are finding the thought of talking about your feelings really icky, suggest to your therapist, could we give this a go? Teach your therapist how to play D&D. Most of them would be fascinated to learn what it means. A D6, what's one of them? Oh yeah, we call those dice in the real world. No, you don't. It's a D6, because this is a D8. It's got 8 sides? Yes, hence why it's called a D8. So if you want to do this as part of your therapy, be open about it. Just say, yeah, this I heard some rando Englishman on the internet. He said that you can use RPGs. Yeah, this is what an RPG is. Can we do it? Yeah, give it a try. And but most of all, the big messages: buy my book.
Yeah, so if you want to check out Daniel's book, there's a link to it down in the description. You can check it out on Amazon. It is Role-Playing Games in Psychotherapy, a Practitioner's Guide. Thank you.
The cover is awesome.
The cover looks great.
That cover.
Yeah, the cover
so
looks
much.
so good. So, guys, check out the book. Daniel, thank you so much for spending this hour with me, and also the prior hour and dealing with all the technical issues of the stream.
I haven't once taken the piss out of you for being Baron de Rop. Yeah, I had so many jokes lined up, but they got all. I was going to start off when you introduced me saying, Daniel, my lord, oh, should that be mine head?
Oh, thank God you didn't.
But, yeah, I'm disappointed.
I mean, my fans would think that you should be, I'm sure. Chat, let them have it. Anyway, so thank you very much for joining. Thanks everyone for donating to the stream.
How much have you made?
I don't know. Let's check. I've got the thing minimized right now, so let's see here. Are we? I usually have like my phone rolling to the side here, but we've had so many technical
do you mean
issues. I've not even.
Your technology hasn't been working?
Oh my gosh!
Wow, you kept that to yourself.
Yeah.
I didn't notice.
Let's see here. How much have we gotten to? We are at. We've raised $71. So, but
that is so good. Thank you so much.
Yeah. So
I mean, I don't know which charity it's going to, but
no, the Mental
Guys,
Health Foundation in the UK, which is where Daniel is based out of. So anyway, thank you guys very much for joining, and you all have a good weekend. I'll see you in the next video. Thanks a lot, Daniel.
Thanks a lot, my lord.
All right, so